Sri Lanka is yet again on edge. Gotabaya Rajapaksa has fled the country before quitting as the Sri Lankan president. The man at the centre of the storm has left for the Maldives, along with his wife and 2 bodyguards. The news has been confirmed by the Lankan Prime Minister's office. During the wee hours of Wednesday, the presidential party comprising 4 passengers left for Mali on an Antonov 32 military aircraft which took off from the main international airport of the country. However, sources claim that the Maldives is not Gotabaya's final destination. He is likely to fly to some other destination from there. He left the country in an alleged bid to avoid detention after stepping down. The Speaker's office has reportedly confirmed that Gotabaya Rajapaksa did not appoint an acting president before his departure. Sources say that the president's resignation letter will be delivered to the Speaker once he reaches his destination. The departure of the president, who enjoys immunity from arrest, was reportedly stymied for more than 24 hours, owing to a humiliating standoff with immigration personnel at the airport who withdrew from VIP services and insisted that the passengers to go through public counters. Reports further suggest that the presidential party that intended to land in Dubai initially was reluctant to go through regular channels, fearing public reactions. Due to this standoff, the president, along with his fellow passengers, reportedly missed 4 flights on Monday before boarding a special Dubai-bound Air Force flight, as he wanted to fly on a commercial flight. The president wanted to land in Sri Lanka's immediate neighbour country, India. However, according to sources, he did not get any clearance. This comes on a day when the Lankan president had promised to tender his resignation after angry protesters overran his palace on Saturday, with calls for his ouster. If the president steps down, as promised, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will automatically become the acting president until Parliament elects an MP to serve out the presidential term that ends in November 2024. However, Wickremesinghe has himself announced his willingness to step down after peaceful transition of government. But Sri Lanka's political rumbles do not end here. The Sri Lankan parties are yet to form a consensus over the interim government. The succession process of the incumbent establishment could take at least 3 days, which is the minimum time taken to convene parliament, with 30 being the maximum number of days allowed under the statute. The parliamentary speaker has said that if Rajapaksa does step down today, then the vote would take place on July 20th.
Been defeated in several cases. That Mr. Nagananda Konitoka, you should decide.
Now, for more details about the situation on ground, joining us live now is our correspondent Dasuni Athara from Colombo. And as we understand, she's actually standing with a protester in Colombo. Dasuni, tell us what's the latest that you have.
Well, yes, Priyanka, the entire island nation still awaits the official resignation letter from the president, which is to be handed over to the speaker. Nevertheless, today is a public holiday. A full moon day in Sri Lanka is always a public holiday. And as you can probably hear and see, protesters continue to gather here right outside the presidential secretariat, as well as the president's official residence, which is right in front of me, in their thousands, to get a glimpse of these iconic locations, as well as to voice their protest and give life to the already ongoing protest movement, which has been dubbed as the Aragalaya. With me, I have one of the protesters who, in fact, has come here from Galle, that is the southern province of this country, which is 250 kilometers away. His name is Basil Tansrike, and he is 35 years old.
Yes, I came from hiring lorry. Yes, all of the people are gathering here, and we want to get rid of Rajapaksa regime. That is why all of the people, and especially in young people, gathering here, and we request go home, go home, Prime Minister Ranil, and we can build our nation and give our stolen money. That is our request.
I understand you are also a school teacher. So how has education been hampered because of these ongoing protests?
The schools are closed. That is why the people are suffering and suffering. We are waiting and waiting the people for getting the fuels, as well as the food and for food items. They have faced terrible problems. The schools are closed. The school children are suffering, and they have no good knowledge, especially the small children. They have faced different problems. They can't write, they can't read, they can't speak. That is the problem. Therefore, we want to build our nation with our people. That is why we gathered here.
Thank you very much. Well, that is genuinely the public sentiment in and around here, where people continue to come in, not only from Colombo, but as you just heard, Basil Kamtrige, who just came here from the south of Colombo, hired a lorry with 24 other of his colleagues just to come here, to be a part of this movement and to voice their opposition and their dissent towards this government, Priyanka. So this is an all-island-wide protest movement where people continue to gather here at this location right now.
Absolutely, Dasuni. As the protester just said, there's clear frustration, pending frustration building up for months now. The political crisis and the economic crisis are only worsening. The latest, of course, is that the president himself has fled to the Maldives. The prime minister wants to resign once a peaceful transition to the next government is going to happen or not. That, of course, is a big question. So what lies ahead when it comes to political leadership?
In terms of political leadership, given that the president of Sri Lanka has now fled, all eyes will definitely be focused on the prime minister. Now, in your latest, Priyanka, just several moments ago, police did fire tear gas and water cannons at the official residence, the official office of the prime minister, which is in Temple Flower Road, which is close by as well. So that is the latest. People are trying to now congregate near the official office of the prime minister to voice their protest and demand for him to step down as well, which really puts Sri Lanka's political future in a cloud of doubt.
Right. Just a final question there, Dasuni. Now that President Gotabaya has left, the seat is essentially empty. Prime Minister Wickremesinghe also wants to step down. So what's next? What's going to happen? Who's going to be making the big decisions right now?
Well, Priyanka, it's interesting to note that both the president and the prime minister did express their intention to resign. But as of right now, neither of them have really stepped down. We are awaiting for the official confirmation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's resignation letter, as well as Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who on an earlier occasion, to make it clear, said that he intends to resign only after an all-party government is formed. However, if you look at it from a legal perspective, this lacuna left by the president will allow for the prime minister to step up and become the president or even the acting president for a temporary time, given that Sri Lanka is due to elect a successor formally on the 20th of July, which is just a week from now.
Absolutely, Dasuni. Thank you so much for all those inputs. We will, of course, keep coming back to you for more on-ground details as and when the situation unfolds. Thanks for joining us on WION at this hour. Now, for more insights, we're also being joined by M. Ashraf Haidery, Afghanistan's ambassador to Sri Lanka. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us on WION at this hour. The world is watching the crisis worsen in Sri Lanka. I'm sure you've been following the on-ground developments as well. Protests have started again after 2 days of calm. Tear gas is being fired on protesters. That's the latest that we have. The political leadership is completely absent. What can you tell us? What's your assessment of this crisis?
Well, it's very unfortunate that the situation has unfolded in Sri Lanka as it has pretty much since 2019, when the Easter terrorist attacks happened and Sri Lanka was hit hard by the economic consequences of those terrorist attacks. And then moving on, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic happened that not only affected Sri Lanka, but the rest of the world, but specifically Sri Lanka, since the remittances that Sri Lankans used to send home, that almost stopped, and as well as their tourism industry, a major part of Sri Lanka's economy, unfortunately, heavily suffered. And then, of course, the Ukraine and Russia war that has affected the global commodities and as well as energy prices. An island nation like Sri Lanka had dependent on imports of those essential items, food and fuel, from global markets that have now not only, of course, affected Sri Lankans, but people around the world, even here in the United States. Gas prices have skyrocketed. So as a result, the combination of internal issues, especially economic mismanagement that had been happening in Sri Lanka, not just over the past 3 or 4 years, but for many years, which cumulatively led to the situation that we're seeing today.
Absolutely, Ambassador. The shocking visuals that have been coming from the island nation for the last few days have, of course, shocked the world at large. Global leaders have condemned the violence on the streets. But the big question is there's a complete political vacuum at the top. There's a vacuum in the leadership. The president has fled to the Maldives. The prime minister is willing to step down. Who's going to take the big decisions when it comes to taking concrete steps to get the nation out of this economic crisis? As we understand, Sri Lanka is, of course, seeking an IMF bailout.
Well, Sri Lankans are very capable people. Their politicians, the elite, are very capable. And it now boils down to the Sri Lankan Parliament, the Speaker, as your reporter pointed out, and as well as the Prime Minister, who is said that he would resign once an all-parties government is formed, and then they would have to move on once the president is officially, formally resigned, to have an acting president, and then move on to the next constitutional step, which is for the members of the Sri Lankan Parliament to vote for a president from among themselves to serve the remainder of the president's 2-year time in office. So now it's really in the hands of the Sri Lankans and Sri Lankan political leaders themselves. And the sooner they move there, I think the sooner they would be able to then negotiate economic assistance with IMF, and as well as major players such as China, United States, and European countries, or the EU, and others, including, of course, India, which has already provided a major credit line of support to help Sri Lanka overcome the situation.
Absolutely. Ambassador, I request you to stay with us on this broadcast. We'll come back to you for some more inputs. Of course, the biggest update in this crisis is that the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has fled to the Maldives, but reports are saying that that's not his final destination. So where is he headed? That, of course, remains a big question. And perhaps to answer this and a lot more, we still have our guest of the hour, M. Ashraf Haidari, Afghanistan's ambassador to Sri Lanka. Ambassador, I have to ask you this question. Reports are suggesting that the Maldives is not the final destination of Rajapaksa. Where do you think he's headed?
I really cannot comment on that. We're also in the diplomatic community reading what you've been reading. So what we are really concerned is, I think, the dire situation of the Sri Lankan people that definitely requires the urgent international attention, particularly from the United Nations leadership, to re-emphasize the appeal they launched in June, and even to call for a major donors conference inviting key players and countries with the resources and friends of Sri Lanka from around the world, including Sri Lanka's neighbors, particularly India, to pledge further assistance in order to address the very specific needs of Sri Lanka. Sri Lankans need food, fuel, and of course medicine. These are the three key essential supplies that are acutely needed in Sri Lanka, and the international community must do more to help. And especially, of course, the IMF should do its part, as well as the World Bank and Asian Development Bank and so many other entities that have been engaged in Sri Lanka over the past decades and years. I think that's where the concern is, because that's exactly what the people have been demanding. Just change of the government and change of the leadership at this time wouldn't really address the needs of the Sri Lankan people. Anyone else that was going to take over will have to work, and it will take time and so forth. So I think there is, on the one hand, the Sri Lankan part that the Parliament, as we discussed, should look after and respond to as quickly as possible, and the other part is the response and reaction of the international community, especially that needs to be led by the United Nations and the Office of the Secretary General. The Secretary General himself should pay closer attention to the crisis in Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka is a very important country, strategically located, very much, and one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. So the stability of Sri Lanka, economic and political, are intertwined, as we know from their past. And I think all countries have a role to play, and that needs to be coordinated by the United Nations. And of course, India has always been there, much like India has helped and supported the Afghan people in our democracy and freedom, and India has an equal role to play, and it has played that role. And I think together with the international community support and the United Nations support and the Sri Lankans doing their part, I think this crisis should be overcome as soon as possible, so that the needs of the Sri Lankans.
Right, we're in fact getting live shots right now of the crisis unfolding in Colombo. As we've been reporting, scores have descended on the Sri Lankan capital. They've come in trucks, buses, lorries, just to protest against the leadership or the lack of leadership. So my final question to you, Ambassador, how did Sri Lanka get here? People have been blaming the leadership or the lack thereof for the crisis that they're in. They've been queuing up for hours for fuel, for food, for essential commodities. How did Sri Lanka get here? Could things have been done differently at the leadership's end?
Well, one is the leadership part. I think that they have been expecting their leadership to do a lot more than perhaps the leadership had been doing in order to address the consequences of global and international crises such as the COVID-19 that has had a global economic and financial impact, not just in Sri Lanka, but across the world, even in India, we know that, and the rest of the world. But then also more recently, the impact of the Ukraine and Russia war. These are the two principal producers of grains on the one hand, as well as energy. And for Sri Lanka, more specifically, two major sources of tourism, Russia being number one source, and then Ukraine number 3, number 4. And that also came to a stop. So the complexity of this is a lot more than I think what is being discussed and entirely blamed on the Sri Lankan leadership. Of course, they had a part to play, but much of the rest is really global and international that I think was very much beyond the capacity and capability of the political leadership in Sri Lanka to address. And Sri Lanka is not alone. And there are a number of other countries more or less in the same situation. You can look at Pakistan and the change of the political leadership in that country, given a similar kind of challenges confronting Pakistan. And of course, you could take a look at Lebanon and Zambia and Ecuador, a number of countries in Latin America confronting the same situation. So, but in case of Sri Lanka, of course, it's an educated people that expected a lot more from their leadership, and I think perhaps in their mind that had not been met, and as a result they resorted to protest. Now, of course, they've demanded the departure of the president, which has happened, but what next? I think their focus now should really, the leadership, especially the legislators of the Sri Lanka, to focus on putting a government together to ensure a smooth transition, and then go about, working with the international community to address the specific needs of the Sri Lankan people. And that's why they're on the streets. That's why they descended from all corners of Sri Lanka demanding, for those needs to be addressed.
Right. Absolutely, Ambassador. Thank you so much for all those inputs. Thanks for joining us on WION World is One at this hour.
No.
Now let's go straight to Colombo. These are all live visuals coming in from the Sri Lankan capital. It's evident that security forces are on the streets. Protests have resumed on the island nation after a few days of calm. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.